Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first ever Inside the Birds Postgame Live. Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan here, joined by a guy who's going to be with us all season long. He's none other than Eagles Hall of Fame offensive tackle, left tackle, Trey Thomas. What's going on, Trey?
Just chilling, man, hanging out, enjoying a glass of wine, trying to get my legs underneath me, watching the entire game. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're all feeling that. We're all excited. Listen, this is going to be great. This is the first ever. It's the inaugural Inside the Birds postgame live. But I'm glad we waited a half hour before the end of the game. I neted to wipe the sweat off a little bit and refresh myself because that thing.
Go get some jumping jacks, man. Get the blood flowing.
I got to work on that, man. I got to get my calisthenics going before. Obviously, the Eagles win 38-35 in Detroit. Second straight year they go to Detroit, come out with a win. This one, the complexion a lot different by the end. We're going to get into it all. I always like to start off these type of shows with you, Adam, and Trey, with kind of a big picture before we start to, dive into it. Big picture. Eagles win 38-35. Close at the end, but they pull it out. They're 1-0. Start with you, Trey. What's your big picture takeaway from that?
Jalen Hurts cannot continue to play this type of game. I mean, there were a lot of hits taken. I know that, he helped the offense out a lot with being able to escape the pocket. But, when you have a season like this, when you have 17 games, to take that type of punishment the entire season, I don't think would be beneficial for him as a player. Yeah,
he was on the run a lot. He had to chuck the ball away a lot. He had to slide a lot. He took a late hit there in the second half. That was, looked like he was going to get his clock clean, but he got up. So we kind of saw that in the preseason. Adam, we've talked about having control of the offense and what the offense is going to look like. Jalen Hurts did take a lot of hits. He also, I thought, worked the RPO game and had control of the offense the way you would want, the way it was described to you, how it was going to look in the offseason.
Just talked about today on our pregame show that what we had heard is it's a two-read offense. It's a RPO offense. And his feet in the first half, I mean, look, he throwing the ball today was very up and down. He missed a touchdown in Gainwell. Was just throwing on his feet. He needed to throw it out here. A couple throws were not accurate, but his runs were dynamic. He got them really. When they were down 7-0, the Lions go down and score in the first drive where it looked really bad for the defense. He brought them back with some scintillating runs. But the story, though, is the guy we didn't pick for the player of the game. Well, that would be A.J. Brown. I am just blown away. And the epitome, before we move on here, the epitome of A.J. Brown is where Will Harris absolutely mugs the guy. He goes right through him and makes a 54-yard catch. And that is A.J. Brown at his greatest. They had no answer for him. He caught 10 out of 13 targets. If they would have targeted him 20 times, he would have had 17 catches. He was unstoppable. Incredible.
He certainly came as advertised. I want to get into both him and what Trey said about Jalen Hurts as we get into the offense. First, my big picture takeaway, hey, you go on the road, and listen, that Ford Field was rocking like it's not normally rocking, right? Yeah. I mean, the crowd was pumped up, and you have to appreciate what Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn, the tone they set in that game. They never gave up. They kept pressuring from beginning to end, and they made a game out of it. So it's always good to come out of that kind of atmosphere 1-0. You go and then correct your mistakes. But I will say, from a defensive standpoint, while there is plenty of work to do, I believe they won the turnover battle on the road. They got the interception. They returned it for a touchdown. I'm pretty sure, I don't have it in front of me, there's some incredible stat about what happens when you win the turnover battle on the road. Your percentages of winning that game are enormous, even more so when you do it at home. So it was good to see. We've talked about the defense needing to be a little bit more turnover hungry, and they obviously got the big one in the first half. And any one play like that sets could be the difference in a game that's decided by 3 points. Let's get into that offense. Jalen Hurts definitely ran a lot, Trey, but I also felt that unlike the whole bailing early from the pocket, he had to. They came after him. They pressured him. And you started to see that a little bit last year. I know you detailed it in a show with us. What the Bucs did was play a lot of single high, bring a guy down, put someone extra on the line of scrimmage, and then try to force him to his left, try to get him out and on the run. As you mentioned, there were times he was able to beat that with his legs. Sometimes he beat it with his arms, but he also took a lot of hits. Do you suspect that you will see this style of defense against him going forward? And if so, that might add to your point about can he kind of withstand that week after week after week?
Oh, yeah, I think so, because that's how you play a zone. When you talk about playing when you up against an RPO. You know,
Right.
the one thing that you could do is that you have to put pressure. You have to send as many guys as possible to kind of disrupt it. You know, it's all about how that backside defensive end or the backside linebacker plays. You know, and so when he is that type of player where he can kind of get you out of certain issues, it kind of concerns you a little bit when he takes that many hits, just because he's such an athlete and he means so much to this offense because of the way he can get you out of trouble. I don't think, you know, when they came out there and they ran that NASCAR package, and you got all these defensive ends, everybody's slanted to one side. And, you know, I saw Kelsey miss a guy every now and then right up the middle. Those are things that you're definitely going to have to correct as you continue to move forward, because other teams are going to look at that and they're going to mimic it. It's a copycat league, and I think that that's something that you're going to continue to see throughout this run.
Do you feel like that what you saw from the Lions was maybe borrowed from last year? I think the Giants did a pretty good job of that. They won one game and then they were tied at halftime of another, where they tried to bring that extra man down and pressure him to his left. And of course, Tampa Bay did the same. So like you're saying, it feels like this will be the blueprint that he's going to have to face going forward, and there'll be some really good defenses he's going to have to face.
Absolutely. I think it's definitely something that they're going to have to be able to be ready to get rid of the ball a little quicker. And then I know that everybody's talking about, you know, the great game that A.J. Brown had. You're going to have to get some of these other receivers mixed into the game plan. I mean, you know, it only takes a little bit for guys to start grumbling, man. You go out there and you see that he had 13 targets, and then you got Smith out there, 0 catches, 4 targets. And then now you have a couple of tight ends that have some catches. I mean, come on, man. You got, you know, spread the love.
Trey, what would you know about playing with wide receivers who grumbled about things, Trey?
No,
I mean, come on. Where's that coming from?
You know what I'm saying? Do I know anything about that? No, not at all.
Adam, the RPO, I mean, the Eagles got over 200 yards offensively passing, over 200 yards rushing. It's like Urban Meyer out there and his wonderful blueprint for what he wanted, except the Eagles actually pulled it off. That is some really good balance. That really goes to what we talked about. This offense is not going to be like the second half of, at least to start, it will not be like the second half of last year. And you saw I thought you saw a good combination of banging with the run, banging with the quarterback run, banging with the RPO pass. And that kept the Lions off their toes at times.
Yeah, I thought it looked like they were going to be sort of heavy pass. But what happened is when you get up 17-7, when you get up big, it gives you the opportunity to run the football. So it looks like it's more balanced. And obviously in the second half, they seem to be in control. Then the defense collapsed. In fact, I got to tell you, this is where the first week of the season, and this happens, it's not just the Eagles, they clearly were gassed, the defense. They collapsed. In fact, I was like, I hope they don't choke this game. The defense had not very much left in the fourth quarter. They just could not stop the Lions. In fact, what shocked me is the Lions kept trying to run the football down their throat, and they were successful. Yeah. With the run defense, we didn't think it would be bad. It was terrible today. That was a real problem.
Yeah, we're going to get to that when we talk about defense. But I still think their offensive balance, though, especially for the first 3 quarters,
it was good.
Pretty good. Yeah, it was good. They worked the RPO really well. Can we finally all give Miles Sanders some credit? I mean, I feel like he gets unfairly knocked, like he's not a tough inside runner. Well, I think he showed you on that 3rd and 1 that he was stuffed at first, bounced it to the outside, got to 24 yards, scored the goal line touchdown. Everybody made a big deal. Last year, he had no rushing touchdowns. He also didn't get the ball as much inside in the goal line situations because Jalen Hurts had, I think, 8 rushing touchdowns, maybe more. But I thought Miles Sanders on 15 touches, over 100 total yards, gave you exactly what you should get, Trey, from Miles Sanders. No?
Yeah, I thought he was solid. I thought he had a really good showing today, you know, and that's what you're going to get when you have a defense. Because the way this offense is set up, defenses have to play you in nickel. You know what I'm saying? So you're going to get a nickel defensive front, and which plays in your favor, especially when you have an offensive line like this. I mean, our 5 against your 5, and then now the running back has to beat 1. I like our chances when you have someone like a Miles Sanders back there.
Right. And Adam, I asked you in the pregame show, I think, how many Eagles ball cat running backs are going to get a carry? It used to be a 2-man running game, but today, 3 running backs, all of them got carries.
In fact, they all scored.
And they all scored too, right?
And Scott came in inside the 5 in the first half, which I thought was interesting. He didn't touch the ball there. They had a RPO with him, and then the ball got deflected. But I like the game plan. Let's get back to the running game here. Sanders looked fresh. I like that they worked the other backs in. This is his first game back from being out for a month with a hamstring strain. And he also caught, one of the 2 catches he had was really nice. He had 15 total touches. Explosive. He looked fresh. I just thought that the approach was great. They ran for over 200 yards. They ran for over 200 yards, didn't they, last year against the Lions?
I believe, yeah, they ran for over 200 yards against the Lions.
Yeah, and then their offense against the Lions, who they feel like they have better talent than they did last year. They moved the ball. I don't say it will, but they moved the ball really well. But the run game was really good. Protection, because it's funny because Greg said in our pregame show, and he's right. Aaron Glenn, if by trade wants to blitz, boy, did they bring the heat today.
Yeah,
may not show with the sacks, but they made Hurts move. And I think what also happened is there were sometimes he did not need to move, where he should have stepped up. There was a blitz, there was an overload blitz where all he had to do was step up, but he worried about the pressure from his right, and then he moved to his left, which you don't want to do. You want to step up to the pocket. This is something that we've talked about, which has been a challenge for him. But overall, here's the other thing. He again, I said this in the pregame. Despite all that, he doesn't turn the ball over. That's very important.
Yeah, I mean, he took a lot of hits. When you take that many hits and you run the ball as much as he did, I think he ran for 90 yards many times, and you don't turn the ball over.
17.
That's difficult to do in the NFL for a quarterback. So a lot of respect for him on that. Trey, the offensive line, you mentioned a few times you thought there was a lot of penetration today, but they were also bringing, I thought on many occasions, more defenders than offensive linemen to block. And so in that case, isn't it on sort of your quarterback or your backs and tight ends if they're chipping to get the job done there?
Yeah, you want to be able to, make sure that you get a body on a body. And if they do bring that one extra person, then now the quarterback has to go. I mean, he has to, it's on him now. But there were a couple of times that I just felt like, all right, where you had one pressure, they set the corner coming off the right side one time, and you didn't slide all the way to the right. Everybody kind of got muddled up in the middle. Corner comes free outside. That's something that you'll go back and you'll watch that on film and you'll make the corrections where you need to slide the line. I think there were a couple of times when they came out there with that NASCAR package and it looked like it was overloaded and you brought someone right up the middle where Kelsey should not have slid as far as he did, where you have you let somebody come free right up the middle, a defensive lineman come free right up the middle, so there are things that, when you go back and you watch the film, you can make the corrections and, because there are certain things just because no one has really practiced throughout this training camp. No one has really seen everything that everybody's going to do. So it's kind of a guessing game when you get to it. So, you expect some of this. So now you'll see how, all right, you'll start getting a little bit more film on what coaches are going to prove and what they're going to show. And then I think that'll help clean some of this thing up as the season continues.
Yeah, I would think so. Let's talk a little bit about the elephant in the room that you brought up, is that Devontae Smith last year, set the Eagles' new record for receiving for a rookie. Probably has some pretty big expectations for year 2. It's just one game. But it's not only that he didn't have any there weren't that many targets as well. There were a couple, looked like the timing was a little off. He's now
4
on
targets.
the right side of the field, right? And it wasn't the right side short or intermediate when you looked at the heat map last year, one of his areas that he didn't have the greatest symmetry on, or maybe it was immediate left. But either way, there was not a good chemistry right there going on with Devontae Smith. Just one game or something to watch going forward? What do you guys think?
I don't know, man. I mean, you bring AJ Brown in, he's Jalen Hurts' new best friend. He's the godfather to his child. They always had barbecues together. They dress alike sometimes. I don't know.
Well, the funny thing is, this became like a topic, Adam, right? When we were at training camp, that it sure seemed like the first 2 weeks was just Jalen to AJ, Jalen to AJ, Jalen to AJ. Devontae got hurt. Or to Goddard, right? Devontae got hurt. But then when Devontae came back from practice, it was all of a sudden as if the people were reading the press clippings, because then it was Jalen Hurts to Devontae for like 3 straight days. So, look, you're supposed to take what the defense gives, but I think this is a weapon that you've got to get involved, obviously.
No doubt. And they're aware of that. And in a game where they moved the ball as well as they did, you would think so. There's just a couple things, though. Hurts was certainly dynamic, as I said, with the run game. You don't want him leading in attempts. He had 17 attempts. That's a lot. He got knocked around. He's tough as nails. I got to give this guy credit. He got knocked around. Touched the ball 50 times, 32 attempts, 17 rushing, 32 pass attempts was my number. That was the number that I used for the season. I thought he'd average about 32, and that's the sweet spot. It's almost about up 6 attempts per game,
right?
Since week 6 last season. So, and then look, the Gainwell, we got our answer in Gainwell. He was going to be a factor. He had 7 touches in the game. That was impactful. He had the goal line run. He's Mr. Goal Line back. It's fascinating. They all had their goal line carries. It's amazing. All 4 ball carriers all scored. That's a really good thing.
That is. When you said you don't want him leading in attempts, you meant rushing attempts, obviously.
Yes, and rushing. 17. That's too many. And boy, did he get knocked around like a pinball machine. See, he's not Josh Allen or Cam Newton. When he's a 6'1" guy, I know he's built well for being 6'1", but you don't want a smaller guy get knocked around like that. It did worry me, the amount of hits that he took. And look, I give Aaron Glenn credit. He was bringing the wood. Yeah, they gave up a lot of big plays, but they brought a lot of heat. And this is where the tape comes in, as Trey could attest to. You got this tape. You see how they attacked your offensive line. They broke down your protection.
Right.
Hurts sometimes has to stand in there and hang in there in the face of pressure and just throw the football and not bail. But overall, good teams find a way to win. They found a way to win. It got crazy late, but they did find a way to win.
All right, last thing on offense before we turn it over to defense is I was surprised by the amount of 12 personnel that the Eagles wound up playing. Not only did they play packages that involved Dallas Goedert and Jack Stoll, but then Noah Togiai found his way onto the field as well. And because of that, it seemed like we didn't hear much of Quez Watkins' name or even Zach Pascal's name until late, and just not much at all. That surprised me a little bit. And Trey, I wonder, do you think game plan specific versus the Lions, or what might Nick Sirianni have been looking for there?
I think you're just looking at what the situation is. You're looking at what the defense is giving you, and you're just trying to get these guys in the best personnel that can give you some success. I mean, you have to try to get something to get these guys open, and you're forcing the ball. Everything is going to be off these RPOs, and you're trying to get some runs in there anyway. So, of course, you're going to see a little bit more 12 personnel because you're trying to get those blocks in there to kind of get some push. And then now, if the run isn't there, then, hey, man, Jalen Hurts, go ahead and go do your thing, make some plays with your feet.
There you go. Okay. We'll see if that's something that they balance out moving forward, or if they'll, against certain teams, they may be more 11 personnel. It'll be very interesting to see how that unfolds.
Well, one thing,
I think a lot of people, Adam, expect a bigger year from Quez Watkins.
Yes, and just understand though, early on you saw the heat that they were bringing.
Yeah,
we'll find out. We'll find out what the tape looks like. But to me, it just seemed like watching it. And Togiai dressed obviously for Calcaterra. We talked about this in the pregame because he can block.
Right.
With the heat that they were bringing, you got to keep Goddard in. He's a really good blocker. And that's why he wasn't targeted very much. Now, he was impactful catching the football, averaged about 20 yards per catch on the screens. But they had to keep guys in. So to answer your question on the 12 personnel, with the heat that they brought off the edge, too, it was from far back. They creeped up everyone. We'll talk about what the Eagles did with their blitzes, which was interesting. But I thought that they wound up handling as well as they could when they adjusted. But it took them a while to kind of figure out what Aaron Glenn was doing.
Absolutely. All right, let's go talk about the Eagles defense. First, we're going to thank our friends at PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fan experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check out all their great content at PHLSportsNation.com. And also on Twitter, you can find them at PHLSportsNation. All right, defense. Well, I hate to be cliche, but talk about the old tale of two halves thing. And it certainly was a different first half than a second half. Trey, it almost feels like they're also trying to play two different defensive line structures. They opened up the game, I believe, in a kind of a 40 front. They had 3 down linemen and an overhang, got run on. And then the next time they came out for defense is when you saw Jordan Davis out there for the first time, and Brandon Graham was in there also for the first time, as if they were trying to get a little bit better against the run, especially up the middle. And then they took the lead, and they sort of went back to more of a nickel look. So is this just a defense right now looking for its identity, you think?
Yeah, I think so. And then, whenever you get the lead, you know that they're going to have to pass. Right. So, yeah, you want to come out there with that nickel and be able to get out there and use your defensive backs to kind of shut some of that down. The concern that I have with this defensive front, though, where's the pressure on the quarterback? You know,
I
when
agree.
you come out of this game, and I know that, you know, a lot has been said about Detroit's offensive line, but, you know, to come out of this game, only 1 sack. I mean, you know, this is something that you kind of was hoping that was something that was cured with the guys that you brought in. And, but to me, it just looked like Goff was just having his way at times, just getting rid of the ball. Now, I when I sit down and I watch the game, I time every throw, and I'm sitting here with a stopwatch. It gets a little weird. You know, and it's just like, you know, you just see him just getting rid of the ball, 1.8, 1.9, 2 seconds. And to me, that tells me that the secondary is playing off a little too much. You're not giving your defensive line time to get there. So to me, I just felt like, yeah, you got the one interception, the turnover, but man, it seemed like Goff was very comfortable out there and just doing what he wanted to do and moving the ball. You know, that's just how I saw it just going through this game.
I agree. I think if we're being fair, Adam, we could note that there were about 5 drop balls by the Lions that were well placed, and then I would say there were about 5 Goff passes that were either overthrown or underthrown, where he wasn't really pressured. He just was Jared Goff in that situation.
Yeah.
You know, we'll talk about next week in a little bit, but when you're facing Kirk Cousins or somebody else, those can really come back to haunt you.
Yeah, look, some of those guys were wide open. They played a lot of off coverage in the second half because what happens is, and this is what we talked about in the pregame show, the way that Gannon plays defense, he's just trying not to give up the big play, even though he's got better talent to work with. Now, I would say that for the most part, their defense completely shut down Goff in the first half. Had a big lead, played soft coverage, gave up a lot of yards. So there were some mistakes in coverage. But the blitz package I really liked is when they creeped up the corners. Maddox blitzed. They had some safety blitzes, so they did some things they'd not done before. It's because they feel better about the guys behind them. Obviously, last year they weren't doing anything like that, so that's something new. But Trey's right. Their regular front, they got like no pressure. I was kind of surprised. I know that Barnett got hurt, left knee injury, and then Cox left and came back.
Yeah,
but the conditioning thing, man, does worry me. I know it's hard to quantify that. They seem to be completely gassed in the second half where you're just looking for them to hold on. They barely held on.
Yeah, well, one thing that really I think surprised a lot of people, although we've talked about it and we knew this was a potential concern for the defense, is that we saw Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick being asked to drop into coverage. And the Lions got them a few times in those situations. And look, I get that they're playing a hybrid defense and they've got overhang players, but people are going to watch the tape and they're going to see in certain situations, if Reddick and Sweat are dropping into coverage, that's a lot of money to rush the passer. That's not rushing the passer and just floating around in the middle of the field right there. Trey, I again, I know it's week 1. I'm not trying to overreact, but this is something Adam and I talked about in the offseason. How are you going to use your overhang players when the offense looks like it's going to run, but they play action and pass? What are you going to do with them? And I think they got exposed a few times in the second half there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Josh Sweat is the type of guy that you need him getting after the quarterback. I mean, you know, he is not someone that he's not like a Connor Barwin type rusher where you can put him out there and put him in the coverage. You know what I'm saying? Like even when you had BG out there playing a 3-4 and you would drop and make it in the coverage every now and then, I don't think Josh Sweat is that type of player. You know, I think he's one that you let him, hey man, go get after the quarterback. Hassan Reddick, can he get into that role? I would much rather see him get after the quarterback. I mean, that's what you brought these guys in to do, especially when you come out of a game where one quarterback, 1 sack. You know, there was, you know, throughout this game, there was only 1 sack on both sides of the ball, you know. So, you know, I think that's definitely something that you want to correct, and they'll make these corrections. You know, you're going to get into it, and we'll see how this season continues to go.
Adam, what were your thoughts on the secondary, the new look secondary? It seemed like first half you saw some pass breakups. You saw James Bradbury return a pick for a touchdown. Everybody seemed to be in the place that you even mentioned some of the blitzing that you saw from the secondary, which I think a lot of Eagles fans were hoping to see. Was it just getting gas, you think, or learning like who they are at the time? What do you think of the secondary overall?
Well, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, or I guess he calls himself CJ, he started the game. Epps set the tone on the first or second drive. He had a really nice stick. They made some really good plays in the first half. Kaiser White, obviously, on the deflection for the interception for the touchdown. He made some plays. They did some really good things in the first half. The only thing that worried me, and it actually was the entire game, and DeAndre Swift is really gifted, but their run defense was atrocious in that game.
Yeah, and tackling was bad too. I mean,
terrible. That gap control, awful, just awful. I know it's the first game, so coaches will tell you, hey, okay, we'd rather this not happen, but we'll make corrections off this tape. They got a lot of corrections to make versus the run. Boy, the gaps that Swift have, and I know he made people miss. I get that. He's very gifted, but he was very shifty with Swift in this game.
Yeah, so that Trey, that's where I'm sort of trying to reconcile, because when the Eagles run over a team, we say, well, they got a great offensive line, they got really good running backs, and the quarterback can run. When the Lions do it, we're being critical of the Eagles, but the Lions have a very good offensive line, and they have two pretty good running backs as well. So I don't know, like, I'm not saying it's acceptable to give up over 200 rushing yards or whatever the Lions had, but they get paid too, as the people like to say.
Yeah, I think that's when you go back and you look at the style of training camp, because for years, you always felt like coming out of camp, hey, man, the defense is always a lot stronger, a lot sharper once the season starts, because they just see ball, get ball, and they just play with their eyes bloodshot red, snot flailing everywhere, because they play with that type of energy. But It just seems like when you go into a game like this and you've been off for a month, it kind of had that lag. You just didn't see the type of energy, the type of bounce that you like to see on that side of the ball. Offense, it usually takes a little bit more time because it's all timing, and you kind of got to get it together. But you want your defense to play like they have like their hands on fire, and you just didn't see that today.
Yeah, which is surprising. I think we're used to seeing this Eagles defensive line and how deep it is. I mean, guys like Derek Barnett, he used to be a starter, and now he's kind of buried there. I was hoping to see Hassan Reddick, just a little bit of that edge speed, that flash, that pomp and circumstance that comes with a player who can get off the line of scrimmage the way he did, but he really didn't. As you guys are pointing out, there wasn't a whole lot to speak of from an edge rush or a pocket pinching standpoint. I don't know. And you mentioned the fact that maybe the corners being in off coverage helped that, but Reddick's supposed to be a guy who gets up on your quarterback really quickly. Adam, did you sort of underwhelmed by what you saw for the first game?
I mean, he's almost the overhang player. You saw him playing right on the ball, next to the D tackle. He just didn't get home a lot for whatever reason. That was obviously disappointing. What was really disappointing is the second half, when they knew that Detroit had to throw, they simply couldn't get to Goff. That was surprising me. This is what you were talking about. I thought for sure, okay, here we go, tee-off time. This is where they're going to win the game. They didn't get home. I just wondered about the conditioning. I felt like it was one of these things where, like, are they going to hold on or not here? Because it's not looking really good. And we talked about this in the pregame. They had a sellout. This is like the loudest crowd they've had in years,
right?
For whatever reason, at Ford Field, and they were pretty excited. Boy, but the Eagles have to feel good. Okay, there were some leaks in their defense, no doubt about it. But if you just find a way to win like this, some of the tape's going to be bad. They're going to have to make corrections, which it's not like there's something so bad they can't correct it. But they did find a way to win. But man, it was one of these situations where, like, I don't like this momentum here. If I'm an Eagles fan, this is not good.
Yeah. I think the Lions should send a thank you letter to the NFL for selecting them to be on Hard Knocks, because I really do think it presented a very, very kind of feel good story for people who watched it. They really fell in love with some of the unheralded Lions. And as you saw, I mean, that place was right. It's like they really believe the Lions are going to be a lot better of a team this year than they were last year. And, maybe Hard Knocks and that the way they produced it had a lot to do with that. So good for them.
They are
That's
a
good
better
to see
team
that.
than what they were last year.
They are. That's fair. Yeah.
I mean, the Eagles beat them 44-6 last game. Last time they played them. Now you find yourself in a dogfight right here that took it down to the wire, against a team that everybody was like, oh, that's just Detroit.
Right.
All right. I think that their style of training kind of had them primed a little bit better to come into this game. We had better athletes to come out of this with a win, but I felt like Detroit came out there and they gave them everything that they were looking for.
And remember, at some point this year, they will probably get first-round pick Jamison Williams back in there, a very explosive player who I don't believe was known for dropping passes in his college career. And again, too many drops by the Lions. I want to all right, well, as we wrap this up, there's one thing that happened in this game that I find a little bit mind-boggling, and I know it's going to be called armchair quarterbacking, as you will, or decision-making. I think you guys know where I'm going with this. And I like Dave Phipp, who used to be the Eagles special team coordinator. But for the life of me, I can't understand that moment. I mean, you never see it coming. So I know you could say that about any time somebody tries a surprise onside kick, but the Eagles had the first possession of the second half. They scored. I mean, I didn't feel like they were that was a great moment where they can steal a possession and get themselves back in the game. I guess what I'm saying is I don't feel like the risk was worth the reward there.
No,
Fair?
the juice
Unfair?
was not
What do you
definitely
think?
worth the squeeze.
Well, honestly, but you know what's funny, Jeff? They actually think about it though. Despite all that, Detroit had a chance to win the game.
Well, it kind of makes you wonder, what if they didn't do that, right? I mean,
And everybody's like, hey, we're going to sneak it right now. I got a plan. We're going to onside.
Surprise onside. Surprise onside.
Surprise onside.
Yeah, I love that.
I guess we shouldn't be surprised, right? Because the main coaches for the Lions are Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn, and they come from the Sean Payton tree. And everybody remembers the great onside kickoff in the Super Bowl that helped the Saints beat the Colts, in 2008? I think it was. I mean, that was a huge, iconic moment in Super Bowl history. But again,
it's worked out in our favor a couple of times. We would do it against Dallas all the time.
Yes, you guys would.
Yeah,
you would. And Dallas was the perfect team at that time to pull it against, right?
It worked every now and then until they took one to the house on us. I mean, that didn't work out too well, but I mean,
No, that didn't. But look, Trey Thomas, your career worked out well. As we can see here and everybody watching, that's a lot of game balls behind you there. And you said that's not even all of them, right?
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, man, that's a lot. That right there is a lot of work right there. You know how hard it is to get a game ball as an offensive lineman? Because if I did good, then that means McNabb did good, Westbrook did good. So for them to say, hey, you know what, offensive lineman, we're going to give you a game ball, that's huge. My mom took one of these game balls one time. I went home and I got it out of the living room. Mom, I need that back. There was a lot of work that went into this.
What was she going to do with your game ball?
I don't know. She just had my mom like, come on, man. What's your mom do? You know what I'm saying? Come on, man. Your moms, they just take stuff and they look at that, it's on the mantle. I went home and I was like, hey, what are you doing with this? This is coming back. I even have one. My first one up there, my first game ball that I ever received. We played Detroit back in November 8th, 1998, and bam, we won against. Look here.
At the Silver Dome.
Look at that. Look at that.
We beat them.
Beautiful.
Yes.
That's
rookie year, 1998. I got a game ball against the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, so the score is a lot different, but it feels like maybe the complexion of the game was a lot alike, very close, very tight. What was the score of that one you said?
That was we won 10-9.
Oh,
10-9.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, November 8th.
Crazy. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right. Before we're going to wrap this up real quick, I want to look ahead. Every week, I'm just going to look ahead here. Eagles are 1-0. They got the Monday night showdown early coming up against the Minnesota Vikings, having just given up 35 points to the Lions. Now they're going to have to go face Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen. Their old friend, Jalen Reagor, will be there. What do you think? They got to make a lot of corrections on defense pretty quickly here?
Yes. Well, yeah, no doubt. Because first of all, Dalvin Cook, who's terrific, who could catch the ball, who's got a tremendous acceleration. See, Swift is shifty. Like he jab step, makes you move one way, he goes the other, makes some block defenders miss. Cook's super smooth. Cousins, if you protect him, he's a very aggressive thrower. You got a new play caller, the head coach, Kevin O'Connell. You mentioned Jefferson, KJ Osborne as their third receiver. Thielen, who's still crafty in his 30s. It would worry me. Now, what helps the Eagles here, this is the newness of Minnesota's new defense. They're running a 34 front. They haven't run a 34 front in probably 40 years. So this is a good time to get them earlier in the season. The Eagles will have a little bit of extra time because of the game being on Monday night. So they got to get themselves together. They should feel good that they won this game. Hey, you know how bad the flight would have been back had they would have choked that game. So they didn't win that game. Trey, I hate to even ask you this, but any games in your career where you blew it, you guys had a big lead. What's the flight back? Is it just quiet?
Oh, it sucks. Everybody's quiet.
Yeah. You
just sit there and the plane is just like you just want to land and just let's go ahead and get on to the next day. Yeah. And let's really get in here and just start getting some work in. This is definitely it definitely changes the flight back. So I think that everybody's high right now. You're feeling really good about it. Hey, we're good. We got this win. Let's keep this momentum going. But there's a lot to be learned from this past game.
Trey, I always wondered about that game against the Packers to open up 07 or 08 season where you guys had no punt returner and poor Greg Lewis had to do the job and he muffed a few. And I think you guys were leading and then lost from a comeback there, a Brett Favre comeback. What that plane ride must have been like on the way back. That probably, yeah. You don't remember that one? Of course not. Of course not. All right, can we all agree? AJ Brown, player of the game?
Yeah. Who else could you give it to?
I know.
I don't know. I think it's got to be AJ Brown.
But weren't you impressed by the way that he played through contact? I mean, the guy's unbelievable. He's, I know Avant was trying to be humble, but as we said on the show, the strongest guy through playing through contact since Avant. I mean, the guy's unbelievable. And even on deep balls, he just wins with his hands, with the hand fighting. So he's a pretty special player. But Trey's right. They got to get Devontae Smith the football on crossers, and he also is a deep threat. Goddard, I know how to block a bit. They need to get him the ball. But here's the great thing. Again, they won. They scored a ton of points. Offensively, they scored 31. Got the defensive touchdown. Lots of corrections on defense. Their defense was not good enough in the second half. But again, they won the game, and they'll move on.
Yes, absolutely. And to punctuate your point on AJ Brown, a lot of those big plays that he made, the sideline catch, the over the middle that he turned, they all came on third down. A lot of third down catches by AJ Brown, showing the difference already. They win third down, you win red zone, you win turnover battle. It's a recipe for a win. The Eagles are 1-0. We will do this again next Monday night when the Eagles and Vikings wrap up their game. Again, a half hour after the end of the game. Look forward to it. It's going to be a great time. It's going to be a great season as we do the inaugural Inside the Birds post-game live show. For Adam Caplan and Trey Thomas, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks for listening. Catch you on the next one.